Welcome back to the Alice Stewart Show on 96.5 The Voice.
Say you want a revolution.
Welcome back to the Alice Stewart Show, 7:06 on a beautiful Monday morning, and couldn't be more excited to talk to my next guest. I've seen him speak in person many times and certainly joined the rest of the nation watching him at the National Prayer Breakfast, and now he joins us to talk about his new book. You know him, Dr. Ben Carson. He is a neurosurgeon. He is an outspoken conservative on the issues that are important to our country and what we can do to improve our future. He joins us this morning on the Royal Overhead Door Hotline. Dr. Carson, good morning.
Good morning.
I'm glad you could join us. First off, I want to start. You're a neurosurgeon. You're extremely intelligent. You really hit the spotlight, hit the stage in February of last year when you spoke at the National Prayer Breakfast. You talked, I really connected with the things you say about your faith and about education and taxes, but you're sitting two people away from President Obama, and you talked about health care. You talked about the state of our nation, but you talked about health care. Why did you take that opportunity to really speak your mind on those key issues when you knew the president was right there?
Well, when I was asked to do it, I was kind of shocked because I had done it before 16 years earlier when President Clinton was in office, and I wasn't aware that anyone ever did it twice. And then I just found out that Billy Graham had done it twice. And I said, I think the Lord has something he wants me to say. But I didn't know what it was until that morning. And then it just settled on me so calmly that I really need to talk about sickness in our nation. Why is our nation sick? And the reason is that people in a country that is supposed to be the land of the free and the home of the brave, people are afraid to talk about what they believe. I said, this is terribly sick. And then looking at our future and recognizing that with the level of debt that we had, which was ever increasing, we were going to destroy the future for our children and our grandchildren, and that we were doing things that disincentivize people, so that the whole American dream was fading away. And I didn't think that I could really get up there in good faith and not talk about those things, because that really goes to the heart of the state of our nation, and particularly the spiritual state of our nation.
Well, and I think that is so critical, and you weave that into all of your speeches and every time you speak. But you talk about political correctness, and you're not out to offend anyone. You just came to speak the truth. You talk about the importance of education. You talk about our tax system, and all of this that you started, this conversation and this narrative at the prayer breakfast, but it's really culminated, in my view, in your book, One Nation, What We Can All Do to Save America's Future. You were here in Arkansas last week promoting it. I wanted to have you on to talk about it. But you talk about our growing debt, our deteriorating morals, driven us into far away from what our founders' intent is. Talk about that and how that is the focus of your book.
Well, the things that I talk about, the debt, the loss of our civility, things of this nature should not be partisan issues. They're things that affect Democrats and Republicans. The fact that we have been divided up into so many categories. We call it one nation because we, the American people, are not each other's enemies, or at least we shouldn't be. But we've allowed ourselves to be manipulated by those forces who want a war on women, a racial war, an income war, age war, religious war, you name it, they want a war on it, because right out of the pages of Saul Alinsky's book, divide and conquer. And it's working extremely well. And what I wanted to do is really help people to recognize that they're being pawns. They're being manipulated. And, our strength really lies in our unity. And, we know that it's wrong to spend what you don't have, but we've allowed that to be made into a war. We know it's wrong to flat out lie about things like, the IRS and Benghazi, but we've allowed people to manipulate it into a political issue. And, we know that it's wrong to envy, what other people have and say, just give that to me, I deserve it. But we've allowed ourselves to be manipulated in that way. And it goes on and on and on. We have principles and values. This is a Judeo-Christian nation, and yet we've allowed politicians and the press to tell us that we're not supposed to really talk about or manifest what our faith is because somebody else might be offended. Now what kind of foolishness is that? We are who we are. If people don't like it, they don't have to come here. I don't see anybody else changing their country because an American may come in. This is craziness. We're just being manipulated to death.
Well, and you mentioned that in your book. Godliness exalts a nation, but sin is a disgrace to many people. And you talk about your faith very often. And in my view, I've often said, if your faith doesn't influence your politics, then your faith is not important to you. But you come across many of these issues not from an R or a D by any stretch of the imagination, even though we understand where you're coming from. It's finding solutions that work and not looking at everything from a political lens, but looking at what works, regardless of your party. And right. I think that's important.
And you have to realize that, in terms of Republican, Democrat parties, we've migrated so far in this country. I mean, if you were to go back 50 years or so to John Kennedy and look at what he was saying, ask not what you can do for your country, what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. I mean, can you imagine him saying something like that today?
No.
In a Democratic convention, he'd be thrown out, tarred and feathered. We've just migrated so far. And even the Republican Party has migrated to the point where the Democratic Party used to be, and we just keep moving further and further toward the transformation of our society, which is exactly what the neo-Marxists want. And we just need to wake people up to who we are, why our country was established. It's supposed to be for, of, and by the people. It was never supposed to be government-centric, where the government intervenes and involves itself in every aspect of our life and controls everything. And the government was never supposed to be our sugar daddy to take care of all of our needs.
And you mentioned the importance of different parties and uniting together, and you talk about this in your book, and you've spoken about it, and the importance of, for example, the conservative movement. There's disagreement in the party. We're seeing it more and more. You may call someone a rhino, you may call them a Tea Party, or you may call them anything, but at the end of the day, come together, vote, and support the people that represent your views and your values that will make this one nation
exactly
the best under God.
And I like to use the story of Esther in the Bible. She was a Jew, but she hid her identity as a Jew because, the people who were in control were, talking about exterminating the Jews. Hiding her identity, she ended up marrying the king. Now, I'm sure there are a lot of people in the Jewish community who are critical, and they say, she's ashamed of who she is, she's hiding her identity, she's a traitor, she's a rhino, whatever. But she had a bigger purpose. Right. And when she got into that position, she was able to save her people. And that's what conservatives need to understand. You can't say, yes, I agree with this guy 90% of the time, but this one issue, I just can't. I'm sorry. I'm taking my marbles and I'm going home.
Right.
That's the same as voting for the other guy. You got to get a critical mass of people in place in order to be able to affect the kind of change you want. If you want to save babies, in the abortion battle, you're never going to do it from the sideline.
Yes, absolutely. You have to get right in there. And one last question I want to ask you, Dr. Ben Carson. We're talking about your new book, One Nation, What We Can All Do to Save America's Future. Dr. Carson, your thoughts on the current status of the Affordable Care Act and its future?
Well, obviously, as time unfolds, we see more and more defects in it. And I'm not sure it was ever designed to succeed, because it wasn't really about health. It was about creating a situation. Now, that situation is being created where the government gains control of the most important thing you have, which is your health care and your health. And we could do this so much more easily, with health savings accounts and a number of other things that I've outlined. it would cost us a lot less and it would put people in charge of their home health care. Now, you may have noticed that in the Affordable Care Act, they put significant limits on the establishment of health savings account because, quite frankly, they know that that is the antithesis of what they're doing, having people in control of themselves. So I believe it will collapse. The plan would be then to impose a single-payer system. But my plan and the plan of a number of people who are working with me is to have in place something that is easy to understand, that other people can see, because then we're going to, try to force people to make a choice. Is that what you really want, government program, or would you prefer this program that leaves you in charge, costs us less money, doesn't ruin our future, and leaves employers free to expand?
All right.
I think it'll be a pretty easy choice, quite frankly.
Right. I think if they don't listen to anything else, certainly you on healthcare. And yes or no, what are your plans for 2016? Do you plan to run?
Well, as I've said before, I'm leaving that in the hands of the good Lord, who speaks to you by giving you wisdom and discernment. And, obviously I'm going to be looking at what happens in November. If, in fact, the people of America indicate that they are waking up, that they really do want a country that is for of and by the people and not this, quote, utopia that the neo-Marxists want with government involved from cradle to grave, then, I would obviously have to consider things quite seriously.
All right. Well, we certainly look forward to your decision, and thank you for your time once again. The book, One Nation, What We Can All Do to Save America's Future. Dr. Ben Carson, thank you, and God bless.
Thank you. Pleasure being with you.
All right. Great conversation, and certainly a lot to learn. You can get his book at any bookstore in town will have One Nation, or also go to Amazon.com. We'll take a break. When we come back, Robert Kuhn weighing in on the latest round of political ads in the U.S. Senate race, and then Spin Room at the bottom of the hour. We're back on 96.5 after this.
The Alice Stewart Show on 96.5 The Voice.